Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio, the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to those around the world. Welcome to TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go on the world's greatest radio. You are now in touch with the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is radio the way it should be heard. The phone lines are now open, and you can get ready to call by calling 1-877-932-9766. Or, if you'd like to get in touch with the show, you can do so today by Gmailing me at the numero 7, mrbobby@gmail.com. And we have tons of Gmails, so it's very unlikely that I will get to your call or your Gmail if you do it today. Okay, let's see here. Mr. Fuller is on the line, and Mr. Fuller is the author of the fantastic book, The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, a compensatory counter-racist code. And we are reading, or will be reading, from the Revised Expanded Edition, in which Mr. Fuller will talk about a couple of times during the entire broadcast. As you now know, we are on for 2 hours from 9 until 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So tell your friends, get ready to call in and listen to what Mr. Fuller has to say in answering your questions and speaking about the book. The book is a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of racism, which is white supremacy. And we are going to talk about that in the sixth area of people activity, politics, but in particular, just that phrase right there, a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of racism, which is white supremacy. So let me start off by saying good morning, Mr. Fuller. How are you?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
You are still learning. Okay, welcome to the show. One of the, I won't call it a byline, but we wanted to start off today's program with that phrase, a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of racism. In the discussions I've had this week and at the end of last week, just that sequence, thought, thinking, speech, and then action. What got you to thinking about that sequence, or why was that important that you emphasize that, particularly on the front pages of the new, or rather the Revised Expanded Edition?
Because anything that's done correctly calls for thought. That's why we have brains. Other than the heart, the brain is they kind of work together. The heart keeps the body moving and facilitates for the brain, but the brain is an organ in the body of all creatures in what we call the known universe that facilitates or makes useful in figuring out things before any organism, any creature begins to make a move. In other words, you think before you speak or act. So that's the sequence. Thought, then speech, then action. Because otherwise, the body, which is always, for the most part, in motion of some type, even if it's no more, even when the body is sitting still, the body is still in motion, because you have a heart pumping. So therefore, before that body moves, that body should have a message to the brain and tells that brain in what direction to move in. Whether to get up out of the chair and walk across the room, whether to respond to the fire alarm. You think about it before you make your move. You just don't jump up when the fire alarm goes off and run into, just head off without thinking, and you run right into the wall that's right in front of you because there's no door there. So the brain tells you, think even when there is a fire where you got to move quickly. You still have to do some thinking. Move in what direction? And so that calls for the thought. Then, if you have to alert someone else, you may say to someone else, there's a fire. You might run past a room or whatnot and tell the people who are not aware that there is a fire, that there is a fire, because the fire may have originated right where you were, but the other people down the hall didn't know that. So you alert them as you go past. That takes thought. But now you're in a speaking mode, and you're letting them know that there's a fire down the hall. Everybody get out. Because it's moving fast. So then you use your brain to act, to find out what is the best direction to go in. You've already done the thinking. You've already alerted everybody. Now you got to act. And act how fast, in what manner. So your thought processes are even taking part in that. As you act, you're also thinking as you act. And so that's just the process. And doing what? Solving problems, which according to what my entire work is about, is supposed to be about problem solving in the most constructive manner. That's it. That sums up everything that is in the basic compensatory code. Compensatory meaning making up for what's missing. Well, what is missing in the entire universe? Problems being solved. That's what's missing. Compensatory meaning making up for what's missing. So as each individual person goes about his or her daily routine, you're supposed to be in a compensatory mode, meaning making up for what's missing. And what is missing is problems not being solved. That's what's missing. What is missing is a problem being solved. So you're supposed to be using thought, speech, and action, basically, to do those two words. Solve problems.
Is there any deviation from that sequence, thought, speech, and or action?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
By using logic,
yes.
Using your brain, you think, now, is there an answer to that question? And that's a question that should be answered. Is there a deviation? Well, you try to think of any instance where there would be a deviation, where you act before you speak, or you act before you think. And the answer, after you give it thought, is no. It's always in that sequence. Thought, speech, action. 1, 2, 3. In that sequence. In doing what? Solving problems. Because everything all day long, with every creature, with every person, is about trying to solve some type of problem.
Yes, when that question came up and the sequence was debated and the conclusion was what you had just said, there really is no deviation from that. Even to ask the question, you had to put some thought, and then you spoke about it, and then the action came with that. With that being said, let's start off today on page 204 of the revised expanded edition of the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept. And about a third of the way down the page, a question was asked, and I will read it and then look for your response. It says, when asked why you use time and energy thinking, speaking, and or acting, trying to replace white supremacy, racism, with justice, balance between people, say the following. And what is your response to that, Mr. Fuller?
It says, according to compensatory logic, it is the assignment of my existence.
What does that mean?
And that's responding to what am I supposed to be doing? In other words, when asked why I am using my time and energy, speaking and acting, to replace racism with justice, in other words, excuse me, a person asking that question, why are you using all your time and energy talking about this racism thing? Don't you have other things to do? Aren't there other things that are more important? I mean, that seems like you're just looking for something to do. I mean, to be doing something. Someone might say that. People sometimes have said that. And so the answer is, according to logic, it's the assignment of your existence if you're a non-white person on the planet. Logically speaking, that's if you go according to logic. Logic meaning what? If you sit down and do a little thinking about it. Everything starting with that thought. What am I supposed to be doing while I'm here? I'm a black person on the planet. All right? First of all, I'm a person. Or somebody said I was a person. Or I'm a creature of some type. All right. So creatures are supposed to be doing something. Whether you're an ant or bird or something. A mosquito. So I am a creature in the form of a person or in a place called a planet. That some people call the planet Earth. In a solar system, meaning a system that has a sun. I mean, that kind of guides you and keeps nourishment going and all like that. So I'm nourished by the sun. And because it makes things grow and causes the waters to move around where I can get to it and all that. So therefore, here I am, a creature in the form of a person being nourished. And so what am I supposed to be doing? Why am I here? Most philosophers, most schools set up in the school of philosophy, they start off with that question. Because everything is about questions and answers. And that's a logical question. Why am I here? So when I look around, I say, well, I'm here to do things. Do things like what? Since I have a lot of equipment to do things, fingernails, hands, eyes, ears, I breathe air, and that facilitates me doing these things and whatnot. Things like what? What am I supposed to be doing? So I say, well, if I have problems, I'm supposed to be, quote, unquote, solving problems. So what problems am I supposed to be solving? That's a question. I'm here, and what am I supposed to be doing here? Well, there are some problems that are here. Well, what am I supposed to be doing about the problems that are here? You're supposed to be solving them, because you're given equipment to solve them. All right? What problems, or a problem, or the problem, or a myriad of problems, a number of problems, am I supposed to be solving? The ones that are right in front of you. Okay, that's logical. Now, what problem is right in front of me? Well, if you are a person of color, in the year 2017, the biggest problem, you might have a number of them, but the biggest problem is someone wants to do harm to you, dominate and do harm to you based on your color. And they have set up a whole system that governs your behavior based on that. So therefore, the question is that a problem? Yes, that is a problem. You come to that conclusion. Then you say, well, then that must be my assignment, to erase that problem solve a problem, there's a saying in the textbook here that you solve problems without making any. So now, okay, you have that problem that you call now people harming you based on color, and you eliminate that problem. What are you going to replace it with? I mean, what is the next problem? Well, the next problem is establishing something better. Something better like what? Well, seeing to it that no one is mistreated and that everybody gets the constructive help that they need. Because that's what racism prevents people from doing. Racism causes people to be mistreated, and racism, in the form of this thing called white supremacy, causes people not to get help that they need, constructive help. You get help in the system of racism, but does that help wind up being constructive? And when you examine the help that you do get, a lot of it is constructive, but it's overwhelmingly subject to forces that are non-constructive. So you want to eliminate all of the non-constructive activity.
Yes.
And that is your assignment. That's why I use the word in capital letters, the assignment.
Yes.
That's what you should wake up. If you're a person of color, you should wake up every morning thinking about, am I on the assignment? I have an assignment. Am I working on it? What am I doing about the assignment? Even if you don't know what you're doing, and most likely you won't.
Mm-hmm.
But you do your best.
Yes.
To assignment of what? Replacing the system of racism with the system of justice.
Yes. TalkTainTradio.com is a 24/7, no-charge, worldwide broadcasting facility with hosts delivering on various topics such as news, lifestyle, sports, law, health, wellness, religion, and politics. Now, here are several shows I'd like to share with you. One is Pastor O Speaks. The other one is Front Street. And another one would be At the Table. All you have to do is go to TalkTainTradio.com, click on Programs for the scheduled times, and a little bit about the person. TalkTainTradio.com. That's radio the way it should be heard. This is Mr. Bobby, the co-host on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Today we are still in the sixth area of people activity in the system of racism, white supremacy, which is politics, with the focus on thought, speech, and action. We'll take a phone call right here. Line number one. You are on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, you're on.
Mr. Neely Fuller, I have a question. You said that the white supremacists, the racists, can kill every non-white person. Is that true?
That the white supremacists are dominant over all non-white people?
Yes, you said that they can selectively kill every non-white person.
They can selectively kill all non-white people?
Yes, you said that they can go place to place and kill every non-white person.
If I understand that question, if the white supremacists have the ability to kill the non-white people of this planet, the answer is, based on most of the evidence that have shown so far, yes. They're the people who have that power. Anytime they decide that you are going to die, and you are a person who is classified as black, brown, red, or yellow, you have no way of preventing that from happening if the white supremacists decide today is your death day. You have no way of preventing that.
So China, they can kill every person in China.
Yes, directly or indirectly. They can kill off. They know. I think the assumption is, unless I'm mistaken, I could be making a mistake. Always keep this in mind. But the assumption is they are the greatest people on the planet for knowing how to end the existence of people or things. If you're talking about people, now if you're talking about the creator of the universe, that's another dimension. But if you're talking about the people on the planet, the people who have the greatest power to cause destruction are those people classified themselves as white and who also believe in practicing racism, which is white supremacy. That doesn't mean all white people. That means those people who have more power than anybody else, all the other people combined, all the other people of color. When it comes to destruction, they are the masters of destruction. According to what? According to most of the evidence we have so far. I don't have any evidence to show anything else other than that. Why? Because when people challenge the white supremacists and say that I don't have to put up with you, you have no power over me, so far, all of those people have lost. So far. That might change by 5 o'clock this evening, but up to right this minute in 2017, nobody has been able to challenge successfully the power of the white supremacists to make great destruction whenever and wherever they please. They know how to poison the air, they know how to poison the water, they know how to do things you're not even aware of. You can just suddenly drop dead, and there'll be no trace of it. Apparently they know how to do that, because there have been reports that people have suddenly dropped dead, and nobody can figure out why. You just drop right in your tracks.
All righty, let's go to the Gmails. Dr. Lawson wrote this. Although we don't know when the system of racism, white supremacy, was created, however, I believe based on logic, non-white people worldwide are by nature non-violent and accommodating. Why then, Mr. Fuller, when the first Europeans landed on foreign land, the native people did not attack but greeted the strangers with open arms? If this is not true, then the alleged savages would have slaughtered them on sight. What is your assessment of that, please?
Well, I just say that, first of all, I still have a question mark. In other words, I still put that question. Have there ever been people who did not willfully, deliberately, and unjustly harm people? Have there ever been any people collectively who did not do that? And so far, I haven't received enough information to be convinced that that's true. I believe that all people have done some harm to other people. You know, people in their own group, all down through history. As far back as, you know, I wasn't here in the beginning, so I don't really know. But I believe that long before racism was invented, that people did harm to people. All people have done harm to other people. Willfully, deliberately, unjust harm. For whatever reason. I have heard that there's a thing, sometimes they did it just out of ignorance. I've read and heard about things happening long before I got here called child sacrifice. People, because they said that the crops didn't grow last year, well, it must be because the gods are angry. And so I've got to make a sacrifice to the gods. So therefore, the next child that we have, we're going to have to throw it in the volcano, because the volcano is angry. The gods that are in the volcano, the gods that govern volcanic action. I mean, it spewed lava on us 2 years ago. So we're going to have to make a sacrifice to the volcano. So people gather up their babies and take them and threw them in the volcano. Now, these things may or may not have happened, but they are reported to have happened. There's people have a tendency, have the capacity to mistreat people, either, sometimes on a great scale, sometimes on a real modest scale. Just harsh words, that's mistreatment. Sometimes, I think that for thousands of years, somebody may have raised their voice to someone, and in anger, and said something to make somebody, quote unquote, just feel bad, and unjustly. It didn't go any farther than that. Nobody got killed or anything like that. But somebody said something that you might call hurt a person's feelings. I think that's possible, going way back in history, even among the most peaceful of people, if there were any such people at any time. But the short answer is, I don't know. And the addition to that, I don't know, I don't have any reason to believe that people were ever the quality of people that people should be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think we should work toward being that. Universal man and universal woman. In other words, having all of the qualities that people should have to make the world the way that it ought to be.
Mm-hmm.
It should have been in the first place.
Okay. Dr. Miller from the NYC wrote this. As a rule, I often try to enlist black help where I can, but more time than not, I find myself feeling as though I have gotten substandard service. This communication would be as long as my arm if I were to go into detail about each time I've wound up getting non-black help in an area where I initially wanted black help. I don't want to ever support this system of white supremacy, but at what cost, Mr. Fuller, does what I pay for means me getting what I want or need? Based on my analysis, Mr. Fuller, do you agree that this is one of the four conditions that you often speak of, meaning pitiful?
Yes, all non-white people are pitiful. Everybody classified as non-white. According to what? According to the evidence. We are worthy of pity. Pity means you have compassion for someone. We are worthy of pity. We are pitiful people. We are walking, staggering around every day. Saying I'm homeless. I need a job. I need some education. I need some food. I need this, I need that. I don't have anything that I need. Where can I get it? Who is smart enough to give me what I need? Because I'm not smart enough to get it myself. Nothing's been passed on to me. I didn't inherit anything. Nobody gave me any guidance. People always just looked at me and wanted to beat up on me. So that's a pretty pitiful state for any people.
Yes, sir.
Or any creatures.
TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go. Check us out on 94.1 WGRN. Podcasts are available. Download the TalkTainmentRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. Stay right there. More Gmails and more of your calls. All that. This is Mr. Bobby, the co-host on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Our topic today, we're still in the sixth area of people activity in the system of racism, white supremacy, and that is politics, with the focus being on thought, speech, and or action. If you'd like to get in with the conversation, you may do so by calling 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. And on the Gmail tip, Dr. Curley, after we take this phone call, your Gmail will be coming up next. And Dr. Mack and Dr. Weston, I got your email, but I'm told that I will not be able to read that this week because there are so many in front of you. But just want you to know and acknowledge that I did get your emails. Let's go to the phone line. You are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. What is your question?
Hello, is that me?
That is you.
All right. Good day, gentlemen. Good day. Always a comment really not many questions. The book is pretty self-explanatory. Love the book. Love the Word of God. Gave out a few copies. Once again, this Saturday, 24th, compensatory constructive action meeting, 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 2800 St. Louis Drive, under the dump.
Hello? Oh, well. All right, let's do this. Let's go to the Gmails. This is from Dr. Curley. Mr. Fuller, many times I find myself trying to help someone who isn't receptive to help I'm trying to give. I've been accused of trying to cram information down people's throats. When it comes to helping those who need the most help, how do we gauge when they'll be receptive to the help?
How do you respond to a person?
He says, how do we gauge when they'll be receptive to the help?
Oh, you don't really. You just put the information out there. But the best time to talk to anybody about anything is when they want to talk about it. That's on any subject. And if a person wants to talk about a subject that you don't want to talk about, then, according to the code, you just simply listen. You might be learning something. So you just listen to what they have to say. And you don't say anything. You just listen. Unless you have a question about what they're saying, then you can ask the question. Because you might learn something from the answer. But you basically only talk to people about things that they want to talk about, but you always keep it in a constructive mode. Now, if the person doesn't want to talk about anything constructive, then you just listen to what the person says, and when they finish talking for an hour or whatever it is, you simply say 2 words. That's interesting. This is in the code book. When a person is talking about something, a subject that you don't think is very constructive or anything like that, but you go ahead and, if you have the time, go ahead and listen anyway if you choose to do so. But if they don't want to hear what you have to say about problem solving and whatnot, then you don't say anything until they do say that they want to talk about problem solving. And then if you talk about problem solving to non-white people, any black people classified as non-white anywhere on the planet, if they start talking about anything having to do with solving a problem, it's going to lead to the race issue.
Yes.
So you never have to force the race issue over on anybody. If you start talking about race to someone, most likely, if you're talking to a non-white person about race or racism, you're going to get opposition. They're going to say, oh, I don't want to talk about that. Talk about something else and all like that. Well, then your response, according to the code, is, oh, you don't want to talk about racism? No, I don't want to talk about racism. I want to talk about party. I want to talk about getting a job. I don't want to talk about racism. Mm-hmm. I'm tired of that. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't want to hear that garbage.
Okay.
You know, and if people tell you that, you say, oh, okay. Then the procedure is, what do you want to talk about?
Yes, sir.
And then let them talk. Because if it's about a problem, according to the code, it's going to lead to the race issue anyway.
Okay.
If a black person is talking about a problem that they have, if they keep talking, at some point, it's going to lead to the race issue. That's a guarantee.
Okay. Going to the Gmails. This comes, I'm not even going to try that one. Anyway, here's a Gmail. It says, okay, Dr. Fisher, he says this. Recently, LeBron James's LA home was vandalized, and they spray painted the N-word on his gate. There is a radio and television personality, he named the name, but I'm not going to name it, who's on national television every day, or Monday through Friday, who claims that, this person is black, who claims that the action wasn't racism because racism only affects poor black people, not rich black people. Mr. Fuller, what do you think about that statement?
I think that racism affects everybody. who is non-white. And it affects everybody who is white, because that is the biggest government on the planet. So everybody's affected directly or indirectly. So if you're talking about harm being done, well, that depends on what Mr. James would say about that. Is it harmful to him? Is that form of racism harmful to him? If he is okay with people spray painting his property, what's supposed to be his property, with anything, is he in favor of that? That's for him to determine.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I call it the United Independent System.
Yes, sir.
The black person who says they don't have a race problem, and some black people say that they don't, you don't try to give them one. The racist will do that.
Yes.
So you just simply go into a question mode. If somebody says that to me, I don't have a race problem. Why are you going around here full of doing all this talk about race? I don't have a race problem. Then I have one question. How did you avoid it? And, walk me through it, because, I would like to see how that works.
Yes, sir.
You're black and you're walking around on this planet, and you've never had a race problem, how did you pull that off? That's my question. I have a series of questions.
Yeah,
for whomever steps forward and says that.
Yeah, that would be
interesting. There are people who are classified as non-white.
Mm-hmm. Okay. TalkToHim@radio.com. We go where you go. Download the TalkToHim@radio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. This is Mr. Bobby, the co-host on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and we are speaking on the sixth area of people activity, which is politics, and in particular, we're focusing on thought, speech, and our action. And we had Mr. Fuller explain that, and we will be doing that all throughout the programs. But right now, we want to, Mr. Fuller, for you to speak to your book. So the floor is yours.
Well, the book is for just what we're talking about. People who perceive themselves as being victims of the system of white supremacy. Now, if you don't perceive yourself as being a victim of racism, then the book is a waste of time for you.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you perceive that you want to help those who are victims of racism, then the book is supposed to be designed to help you think, speak, and act to replace racism with a better product, which would be the product called justice. And the title of the book, the long title, the title which is explained in the book, like everything is explained in the book, the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. Now, what that means is you should be united with the logic that goes with the universe. Logic meaning how to go about doing things in the best manner. You should be united with that. But you are independent in how you go about doing it, and that's by independent. That means not independent of logic, but independent of other people, of other non-white people. You're not trying to unite other non-white people with yourself and get them in lockstep with you, because as an individual, as a person, you make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
But you want to direct people to be united with what? With logic. 1 and 1 is 2. That applies to everybody, regardless how anybody feels about it. Whether you're white, non-white, short, tall, male, female, whatever. An insect, an animal, any creature, or inanimate objects, rocks, trees, water. These all have a logic to them. So this is what you want to be united with, always using logic about cause and effect. Don't unite with people. That's not going to work. If you're a victim of racism, you unite with logic, because all people, if they're going to be doing anything that makes sense at all and getting anything done in the most constructive manner, are going to have to unite with logic. So that's what that means in the title of the book. United Independent. But you are an individual person. I could have used the word individual, but I chose to use the word independent. But you are a person, separate. If you're not what they call a co-joined twin, joined at the hip, where you both have to do the same thing at the same time all the time because you can't get away from each other. This is why they separate people who are co-joined, twins that are co-joined at the hip or something like that when they're born. They try to surgically separate them so that they can function as individual, independent entities, creatures, people. But both of those people will be following what? Not each other necessarily. They don't have to be in the same place at the same time forever. But they follow logic, because all creatures should follow logic. Now, the word compensatory means making up for what's missing. So you need a code and a system and a concept for doing that. Making up for what's missing. Whatever is missing. You need food. You have to have food, but you don't have food. So food is missing. So how do you go about getting food? You have to have a code or a system or a concept for going about getting food. So that's why you have that kind of long title.
Yes, sir.
The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. But it's a compensatory counter-racist code, meaning you go about doing it a certain way in order to do what? Eliminate racism and replace it with something better than what you have eliminated. And that would be presumably justice. You can get the book by going to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com.
All righty. What line? Line number one? Okay. Line number one, you are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Greetings, Mr. Bobby. Greetings, Mr. Fuller. I'm from Baltimore also, and where we hold the compensatory constructive meetings. And I want to ask Mr. Fuller, can he please clear up for the people in Baltimore the difference between the dictionary meaning of racism and the compensatory meaning of racism? And I'll take my answer off the air.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fuller?
I just go by what I have written. I made up that definition. I said racism is white supremacy, and white supremacy is racism. There is no other form of racism. Presumably, according to the evidence, the white supremacists invented racism. They're the ones, according to all the evidence, who make the decisions about what race a person belongs to. There's some evidence of this, substantial evidence. For instance, 1860, in the Northwestern Hemisphere, people were classified as white, black, and mulatto. These were the three classifications. Now, here it is 2017, and I think there's something like, well, the census prior to, in the Northwestern Hemisphere, 2017, was 21 classifications. And a lot of them have nothing to do with color. You even have a race called Pacific Islander. Pacific Islander, it's all kinds of people who sail the Pacific and who are on islands in the Pacific. I mean, so is that a race? Is that a color? Can you look at a person's color? Because race is supposed to be about color, according to the white supremacists. It's all about color. So if you look at a person's color and you say, oh, I can tell by your color, you're a Pacific Islander. You're not from the South Atlantic or the Mid-Atlantic, or you're not from Florida. You're a Pacific Islander. I can tell by your color that you are a Pacific Islander. And then there's another category, some other race. So you walk down the street, so you're looking for somebody who is described as some other race. You got a piece of paper in your hand, and it says on that paper, the description of the person that you will meet over there in that park, where there are about 15 or 20 dozen people. And so you walk among them, you know, among all of them, and look at them, and find out the one among them who is of some other race. Now, with that type of instruction, would I know who to look for? Some other race. And I'm looking for a color called some other race. a color of a person called some other race. So what I have done in the code book, and I think is right on point, is just one race. That's the white race. And the only way, and the only reason you'd be a member of a race is to practice racism. And racism is you dominate and mistreat people based on color. Black people have never, ever, according to logic, been a member of a race. So how do we get to be members of a race? Or people say that we're members of a race, and you're required to say that you're a member of a race. It's the usual suspects that had us do that. I mean, we were supposed to be, just people. And we would call ourselves by family names or tribal names. That's what most of the world did. You say, I'm a member of a certain tribe, or I'm one of the people of the valley, or I'm one of the people of the river, or I'm one of the people of the mountaintop. We're mountain people, or we are this group or that group. But race? When did you join a race? No, it's the usual suspects that say that we are members of a race. The white supremacists. They said that they called themselves the white race. Then they went around slapping labels on everybody else saying, you are a member of a black race. You are a member of a brown race. You are a member of a yellow race. You are a member of a red race. And you say, race? Based on what? What are you talking about? And they said, because I said so. If you don't like it, whip me.
Wow. Okay. Let's go to the phone lines. Line number 2. You're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, line number 2.
Hello?
Yes. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to say I truly honor everything that Dr. Fuller says. I just have a quick question. I really respect receiving a lot of information from our elders at this time. But my quick question is, Dr. Fuller, what statement do you think white supremacists is trying to make by the verdict in the Philando Castile case? Because I remember you were saying in a previous talk show, you were saying something about don't run, don't fight, and don't argue, and things probably should work out. But in this situation, it seemed like he did all those things, and it still didn't turn out right for him. So what do you think white supremacists is trying to push on? What agenda do you think they're trying to put out there?
Was that the show when Mr. Fuller said, don't fuss, don't fight, don't flee?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. All right, Mr. Fuller?
Yes. Don't fuss, don't fight, don't flee. I still say that. Why? Because that don't work. And you might say, well, like you are saying, I think, well, if you don't do those 3 things, what are you going to do? You do what you're told. You don't make any move at all. And you still might get shot.
He
Why?
did.
Because that's the white supremacist doctrine. They're sending black people a message over and over again. You don't have any business breathing if I decide that you're going to stop breathing. When are you thick-skulled people are going to learn that? I have absolute power over you. You will die when I say you die, and you will breathe when I say that you breathe. And I am going to reinforce that whenever I see fit. Now, what do you do about that?
Yes.
You look at it just like what it is. This is why it's real important to get rid of racism and stop all these other priorities that we say that we have. Man, I ain't got time to talk about no racism. I got to go here. I got to go there. I got all these other things to do. You up here talking all this nonsense about some racism. Racism is here, so what? I mean, I got things to do. Well, you're not going to do nothing because the racism is going to stop you from doing whatever you're doing if it's something that makes sense. Because that's what the racism is really all about. It's not anything you can step around. You're going to be subject to it because we're all on a battlefield. And I have said that when you see anybody who is acting in behalf of racism approach you with the means of sudden death, you practically have to consider yourself dead. This is the way to look at it. You can't look at it any other way. I mean, your heart should be in your mouth just by a person standing there talking to you who is able to cause sudden death. Just talking to you. You should say, hey, I might be dead at any minute. I can't play with this at all. And even then, not playing with it, doing everything that you're supposed to do, just like anybody on a battlefield. On a battlefield, if you've seen movies of battlefields, sometimes that soldier who has that gun pointed at you just decides, well, I thought that I was going to take you prisoner, but now that I have a second thought about it, ain't nobody out here but me and you. And I was going to take you prisoner, but I don't have time to be bothered with prisoners. So he takes that rifle and does what? Shoots you right there in the head. It happens on battlefields all the time. When the person has an option of taking you prisoner or killing you, and you're there with your hands up, you have already surrendered. You're standing there with nothing. And you say, hey, I'm now your prisoner. I agree with that. I'm not fussing, I'm not arguing. Take me to your prison camp, because that's where we really all are. And the soldier standing there, the race soldier, that's what the textbook calls him, says, you know what, I'm not taking you nowhere. I'm going to kill you. And so you're just dead. We should expect that.
Oh, okay, Mr. Fuller. But this man, Mr. Smith, did that. He didn't fight, he didn't fuss, he didn't flee. He had a weapon, and he was informing the race soldier that he had a weapon. He was in compliance with everything that was going on, and he still lost his life. Was executed right there.
I saw the film clip, and I say, from what I could see, it looks like it was just a decision was made. That's what it looks like to me.
Yes.
I wasn't on the jury, so I might not be privy to all the information. But it looks like to me a decision was made. I'm not going to tolerate, I'm not going to even be bothered with this. I'm not bothered, I don't even want to give this guy a ticket.
Okay.
I'm going to kill it. Bang, 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 bang. You're dead. And apparently, if the white supremacists had anything to do with it, they say, yeah, this worked the way it should work. Well, this is what every black person should expect. Get rid of those balloons and whatnot on the fences and whatnot. Don't do any more of that, because this is going to continue. You have to get rid of the entire system of racism in order for that to stop. That's the prescription. Otherwise, just keep moaning and groaning about being killed for nothing, because you're going to be killed for nothing. You've got to get that in your minds. You have to have that in your mind. All over the planet.
All over the planet. Wow. Thank you, caller, for your call. Appreciate that. TalkTameAtRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio the way it should be heard. Stay tuned for the second hour, and thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTameAtRadio.com, the world's greatest radio.
The most important question in all racial matters is why. One should always ask it.
Radio, the way it should be heard.
You've got the power. The world's greatest radio. TalkTameAtRadio.com. Talktainment Radio, worldwide sound. Talktainmentradio.com. We give you a reason to come. The world's greatest radio. We give you a reason to stay. Radio, the way it should be heard. You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest, and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
This is the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
Welcome to TalkTainmentRadio.com, hour number 2. We go where you go on the world's greatest radio. You are now in touch with the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is radio the way it should be heard. We are speaking to the subject in the 6th area of people activity called politics, and in particular we are focusing on thought, speech, and action in the system of racism, white supremacy through politics. And Mr. Fuller, if you listened to the first hour, gave some illustrations and spoke to that, and will continue to speak to that, answering your questions and your Gmails. To get in contact with the show, you may call 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com, and join the stack of them, because I have a stack of them. Let's go to the phone lines. Number one. You are now on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Morning, Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. How are you this morning?
I'm still learning.
Wonderful. I just wanted you to know I learned about you through Tariq Nasheed on his blog, and I want you to know that I thank you very much. I knew that it was an answer to white supremacy. I just didn't know what it was, but this is about the closest that I've ever came to dismantling white supremacy. And I just want you to know that I thank you. And a lot of the young people out here are getting on code. They are parroting what you're saying in your book. And I did purchase the book. So I just want you to know I thank you and keep up the good work. And I know that we haven't been successful because it's still in place, but I know if we keep trying, eventually we will dismantle white supremacy.
All righty. Appreciate the call. Dr. Rashad wrote, Mr. Fuller, he says, please continue educating the masses and doing a good job of sharing your knowledge. Recently, though, the media announced that scientists are now saying that the human race originated in Europe and not Africa, as has been taught for the last 100 years in American schools. What is the coded response to this announcement by the usual suspects? Thank you.
Well, I have a codified response to what we call our background. And what that question was, what that statement was about where people originated. Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Is that what that question was?
Yes.
I want to make clear about what the question was.
Yes.
That where people originated.
Mm-hmm.
What I always say is, if you ask me about my history, because we're talking about history here, I have one statement according to the code. According to the code and according to the evidence, according to the logic, I am from, we're talking about being from a place, because a place was mentioned in this question about, Europe or Africa or where did the first people come from. I am from every place that I have ever been, and I am from every place that I have never been. I'm going to say that again because this is in the book. In answer to that question, that's in the book. I am from every place that I have ever been, and I am never been. And that is the truth. And it doesn't get any better than that. So that takes care of all arguments about where somebody is from, where anybody is from. Every place that you have ever been, and every place that you have never been. Because what's the importance of where you're from? That's the question. Where you're from. What does that mean? I'm from the other room. If I'm sitting in one room and there's another room adjacent to that room, I'm from that other room. They say, well, you might not be from that room because you may not have ever been in that adjacent room. I'm still from it. That's why I'm from it. I've never been there. So what? I'm in the room that I'm in. And then when I move 1 inch away from where I am right now, I'm from that inch that where I was previously. And I'm from all the other inches that are in the entire universe. I am from the other side of Mars. Why? Because I'm not there. So I'm from there. From, F-R-O-M. What does that really mean? I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm from Nova Scotia. I'm from Kenya. I'm from Scotland. I'm from the South Pole. I'm from every place that I have ever been, and I am also simultaneously from every place that I have never been. And that's the truth. And you know what? If anybody thinks about it, thought, speech, and action, so are you.
Okay.
You're from every place you've ever been, and you're from every place you've never been. You're from your mother's womb. Are you there now? No, you're from there. Well, what about somebody else's mother? Are you from that person's womb too? Yes, you've never been there. You're from there too.
I got it.
That's it. That's a scientific analogy. So it comes down to, what do you mean by from? And what does that really mean in practical terms? That's when the rubber meets the road.
Yes, sir. I got that one. A little sidebar. A couple of shows ago, Mr. Fuller, you, and not in jest, but you had mentioned a song that I had never heard of. But it was, I remember you saying the song was, I Told You I Love You, Now Get Out. You remember saying that?
Yes,
and I thought it was very funny or comical. Well, one of our loyal listeners, Dr. Thompson, he actually sent the song to me. I got it up on Gmail. I'm not going to play it. But it was, well, anyway, Sybil Shepherd sung it. And he sent it to me with a ha-ha by it. Yeah, Mr. Fuller was right. I told you I love you. Now get out. And I just thought I would make mention of it. I think I'll play that when I get home. I told you that I love you. Now get out. Do you remember who originally wrote that or sung that?
I do not know. I heard that somebody told me about that song back in the early 1950s. And they said that it came out in the early 1940s. That's when it was originally came out. I told you that I loved you, now get out. And we were talking about the word love.
Yes.
It means different things to different people. What do we mean by it? The word has been kicked around so much, it basically has no meaning. You know? I killed her because I loved her. People have said that in a court of law. Your Honor, I killed her because I loved her. Well, you know, that raises a question, and I've used that illustration over and over again. Oh, you killed her because you loved her. What do you do with people that you hate?
Yeah. Ooh, yeah. Good question. On page 204 of the revised expanded edition of the compensatory United Independent compensatory code system concept, you wrote at the very bottom of the page, or a question was asked, what is the correct way for you to think and or so-called feel about the way that you look or appear? What is your response to that?
The response to what is the correct way for you to think and so-called feel about the way that you look, the way that you appear to other people.
Appear to other people.
Do not think that it is correct for you to feel sorry for yourself because you may not look the way that most people think that a person should look in order to be regarded as a so-called, quote, unquote, good-looking person. So in other words, somebody says you're not good-looking, well, you know, that gets into the question thing again, what we started off this program about. Questions, thought, speech, and action. You think about that. And the person says, you don't look the way you ought to look. Well, how should I look? So you go into the question mode. So you practice thinking, speaking, and acting as if your normal physical features exist, and therefore they should exist because they do exist.
Yes, sir.
In other words, whatever made you looking the way that you look. So you look and see if it's functional. That's the first thing. Because sometimes people are born with, what do you mean by look? You might be born with a deformity. So one arm is shorter than the other. But can you use that arm? I mean, you know, as best you can, even though it's shorter than the other arm. And if the answer is yes, well, then you use it. And if it's no, then you try to think of what? How do you solve the problem by doing something with the arm in a manner where it becomes useful and can do the things that a regular length arm would do. And because every person is different. People are not absolutely the same, not even twins. Twins are not absolutely the same. Why? Because it's two. The very fact that it's two of them means they're not absolutely the same. They might look to the eye exactly alike, but they're not the same. So what should a person look like, since nobody looks exactly like anybody else? Even right down to the fingerprints. That's why they can say that, hey, all these people in here look alike, but they got different fingerprints. Well, that different fingerprint makes you different.
Yes.
That makes you different right there, even if you may look exactly like everybody else in the room. I mean, you can't tell the difference by looking. I mean, but when you look into the details, just the fact that there's two people sitting there, it means there's a difference between one person and two persons. That's what you go by.
Okay.
So what's the point? You're talking about how a person should look to somebody else. Well, you don't look good. I mean, what do you mean by looking good? Looking good to whom? For what? For what purpose? In order to achieve what?
Always asking questions.
Yes.
Okay. When you went on to further indicate, when someone criticizes or so-called pokes fun at your color, shade of color, your hair, or the shape or the size of your nose, lips, eyes, ears, etc., what are we to do about that?
You say, apparently, I appear the way whomever or whatever created me.
Okay.
And that's it. I feel this way. So if you got an argument with me about how I look, pick that up with my creator. That's not in my jurisdiction.
Got it.
Yeah, you got an argument with that. And see, and the reason I'm saying this is because the white supremacists have a problem with black people being black. And the universal response to that is, oh, you got a problem with me being black, a black person being black? So yeah, you're black. Therefore, I mean, I got a problem with that. Well, why take that up with me? I have nothing to do with that. So you like to get to the source of things, sir, a man. Take that up with the source of me being black. Take that on as a project. See how far you get.
Okay, let's go to the phone line. What line are we on? Line number 1. You're up. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Fuller. All right, this question is based on something you said, or you continue to say. You say that black people usually, they can't wait to show off, but to other black people. Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, to other black people. And I agree with that. My question is, do black people, can black people show up to white supremacists or white people? Are they capable of doing that? And is it, I know it's not wise to do that, just understanding your code, but are they capable, or does it make sense for them to show off to white people in that sense?
Okay.
Like how they show up to black people.
Well, no, it doesn't make sense for black people to show off to anybody. Showing off just means you're just attracting attention without a logical reason for doing so. That's what showing off is, by definition. You're just doing stuff to get people's attention. Okay, so the question now is, because everything is about questions and answers, are you trying to get my attention by what you are wearing or what you are doing or what you are saying? I mean, standing on the street corner, yelling at everybody that goes by. Evidently, you're getting attention, so you're showing off. But now here's what. What makes that showing off? All right? Now that you have everybody's attention, whether it's white people or black people looking at you, or any people, or birds looking at you, or ducks looking at you. Okay, so you got the duck's attention. Okay. It comes down to one question here. What do you need my attention for? You got my attention. Now, what do you need my attention for? In order to accomplish what? Why do you need my attention? You did something deliberately to attract my attention. Now you got it. Now that you have it, what are you going to do with it, and in order to accomplish what? Here again, everything in codification is what? Questions and answers. But evidently there's a problem here. The problem is you did not have my attention. That's anybody, trying to get anybody's attention for any reason. Just a person standing up in the office building and start waving at people or whatnot, and start shouting at people. Everybody over here right now. Evidently you're trying to get everybody's attention because that's who you called. You called everybody. So everybody stops what they're doing in the warehouse and they rush over to where you are. Now you got their attention. Now what? What did you try to get people's attention for? And that's whether there's a young lady or an old lady, walking down the street, half naked or something. Is she trying to get somebody's attention? And whose attention is she trying to get? And for what reason? The fella walking down the street with his pants down, way below his rear end. Is he trying to get somebody's attention? Now that he's got somebody's attention, maybe because somebody might say something about it, what are you going to do with the attention that you got? And what is going to be the what? Constructive result.
Yes.
Because anytime you're trying to get somebody's attention, you should be saying to the entire world, hey, you all are not doing things that are constructive. So I'm going to try to get your attention where I can point to you all what you should be doing is paying attention to me because I am the source of what? Constructive results.
Constructive results, that's right. TalkTainmentRadio.com is a 24/7, no-charge worldwide broadcasting facility with hosts delivering on various topics such as news, lifestyle, sports, law, health, wellness, religion, and politics, which we are on today. Now, here are several shows that I'd like to share with you. The first one is called Super Cool. The next one, Conversation with Don Karima, and one of my favorites, New Money. Now, all you have to do is go to talktainmentradio.com and then click on programs for scheduled times. That's all you have to do. Talktainment Radio, that's radio the way it should be heard. This is Mr. Bobby, the co-host on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Our subject today is politics in the system of racism, white supremacy, with focus on thought, speech, and action. That's what we've been homing in on in this area. If you have any questions, you can call in by calling 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com, and I won't get to them today, but they will be piled up with the rest of them. Boy, and do I have a stack of them. Mr. Fuller, a few shows back, maybe 5 or 6 shows, you mentioned that people like to use this particular word. I'm just going to give the initials of it, MF, and other words and other phrases. In this section of politics, and in particular, again, would focus on thought, speech, and or action, and that in particular for victims of racism, victims of the racism and white supremacy. You mentioned on page 206, you had this in bold printing. You said you had to put it out there, name calling, and you said do not, and I'm going to repeat that, do not under any circumstance call any person by any name or title except the name or names and or titles that the person asked to be called by and or willfully accepts being called by. Could you give an explanation on that one?
Yes, and I have here in the book. When a person calls you a name, it's called name calling, do not respond before asking yourself if the name that you are being called is true. If the name that you are being called is true, respond by saying yes, or by saying thank you very much. If it is not true, respond by saying nothing. If you are confused about the name that you are being called, then you do what? Ask for a definition of the name or the title.
What do you mean?
Like the N-word.
Okay.
For instance, somebody calls you the N-word. Now, you can respond simply by saying nothing, because you don't know whether or not you're being called that. But if you are being called that, you respond if you say that, if you think that that's what you are. If you're confused about what it is that you're being called, then you ask for a definition. You say, sir, what you just called me, what does that mean? Did you just call me that? And the person says, yes, I call you that. You say, well, I don't know what the definition of that is. Would you give me the definition of what you just called me? Because I'm not familiar exactly. We might not be on the same page about what you mean when you say that. And don't help the person with the answer. Once you ask a question, get in the habit, regardless of the question, do not help the person with the answer. Don't give your opinion of what you think that person means. Once you ask a question, any kind of question about anything really, do not help the person with the answer. That's why you are asking the person for his or her answer. You're not asking the person for your answer, or what you think the person means, or what you want the person to mean, or whether or not the person should mean this or should mean that. or what you have made up your mind that it does mean. No. Be quiet once you ask the question. That's any question. And listen for the answer. And, for instance, it says here, if you are called a liar, ask the details about what you said that was said not to be true. Rather than get mad and start cursing people out about what you are not, you just ask questions. You get details. Oh, you called me a liar? Well, if you have an idea of what a liar is, a person who has said something that's not true, then you say, okay, what is it that I said, sir, ma'am, always try to be courteous, that is not true? What is it specifically that I said that is not true? If I understand what you mean by calling me a liar. Lied about what? When? Where? Under what circumstance? See, all problems are solved through the process of what? According to compensatory logic. Questions and answers.
Okay. Woo! On page 207, you said, when you are confused, have doubts, and or have questions, this is in the middle of the book, or middle of the page, have questions about a person's chosen or accepted title of identification, ask the following and include, and then you have parentheses, including the chosen or accepted title. And then you have listed 8 things over there. You can choose one that you'd want to address. Are you a whatever? Am I a what is a?
Well, that's on page 207.
Yes.
When you're confused or have doubts and or have questions about a person's chosen or accepted title or identification, ask the following, which includes the chosen or accepted title. Are you a? See, in other words, questions and answers again. Are you a what? Whatever it is, if you're confused or you have questions about a person's identification. Are you a Polynesian? You know, if you call yourself a Polynesian, do you call yourself a Polynesian? If they say yes, and then you can probably ask the person, am I a Polynesian?
Yes.
And wait for the person's answer. Don't argue about the answer that you get. That's another thing.
I like number 8 you have down there.
Right, and number 8, if you, an expert, number 8 is a question.
Yes.
Are you an expert in regards to being a whatever it is? If so, how did you become an expert, and why is it that I am not an expert? And that's a question. And wait for the person's answer. Don't try to give the person your answer. You already have your answer. Or maybe you don't have it. But anyhow, the whole purpose for asking a question is to get the answer that the person has, not your answer that you're looking for.
Yes, sir. Talktainmentradio.com. We go where you go. Check us out on 94.1 WGRN. Podcasts are available. Download the Talktainmentradio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. Stay right there. More of your Gmails and more of Neely Fuller. Come, Bobby, the co-host on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. And we are and have been discussing politics, the 6th area of people activity in the system of racism, white supremacy, with the focus on thought, speech, and action. That's what we've been focusing on today. You can call in by calling 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com, as I'm shuffling papers all over the place, which you hear in the background. Before we take the phone calls, Mr. Fuller, Race Rules, that says, I guess his hashtag, indicated that the movie Get Out has now been released. So he says, the Race Rule says you have no excuse now. He says, we all like Shawshank, but maybe not as much as you did. Go figure. Okay, let's go to the phone lines. Line number 1. Okay, line number 1, you're up with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for taking this call. May I speak, my brother?
Okay, you got, wait a minute, let me get the clock here. Okay, you got 2 minutes. Go ahead.
I think you be cheating me on them 2 minutes, man.
Brother, I've got it now. Go ahead. Go ahead.
All right, brother. On these police shootings, people, listen very carefully. These are not police shootings. These are state-sponsored political assassination designed to create an atmosphere of violence and chaos and things gone mad. They have to have an atmosphere like that when you're going to exterminate a people. That's why you see these police shootings all over the country. They are designed to create chaos and terror. And black people, you have no police. Let me say that again for those who didn't hear it. You ain't got no police, black people. You have a occupying army. This is what the military do when they in Vietnam, Korea, Afghanistan, just shoot the people down. You ain't got no police. Now listen, they blew up that federal building in Oklahoma. They blew up the World Trade Center. They blew that up in front of your face. You can see it over and over on super slow motion. They blew up that building in New York. They blew that. Then they blew up that expressway in Atlanta. Look what they doing. They are creating an atmosphere of chaos. Things gone bad. They must have that atmosphere for us to be exterminated. Now, I know people don't want to hear that, but somebody got to tell you. Now, Hitler did not just walk into power. There was a power structure in Germany. They allowed Hitler to come into power. They knew exactly what he was going to do. Donna, Hitler, Mussolini dumped here. He did not walk into power. The power structure here allowed him to come in. Why do they want him in? They want this atmosphere that they are creating. Now, I suggest to people, sure, the white supremacy run the world. I understand that. But it doesn't mean you might not be able to go somewhere with some grandchild or send your grandchildren somewhere to live their life out. Right now, they are going to take us down. And the only answer I have heard from us in my living and going back in history was Marcus Garvey in the 1920s. Garvey said, if we did not go back to Africa and reclaim Africa for us and the Africans, he said the white man was going to do away with us here, and then he was going to do away with the Africans. It is going down exactly like Garvey said it. And sure, the white man was in Africa when Garvey said that.
Okay,
and Garvey said you got to fight him there. That's what you're going to have to do.
Okay.
But it was best to fight him there in 1920 than to fight him here 100 years later in his wheelhouse.
Okay, my brother, I got you.
Thank you, brother.
Okay. All right, you got to put that under VGQ. That's my man, the extermination man, calling in. At least that's what the people on the internet call him, extermination man. But thank you for your call, my brother. Let's see. I'm supposed to say the caller or Michigan listener ask, Mr. Fuller, what suggestions can you give me to help non-white people control emotions when discussing racism, white supremacy? How do you, Mr. Fuller, control your emotions and remain calm when dealing with racist and confused non-white people? One example, in my experience lately, when I mentioned that racist white supremacists are the smartest people on the planet, the non-white people I've encountered tend to disagree and get emotional instead of thinking about the truth to that statement. I also find that some white people seem to like pushing non-white people's buttons to get them upset and emotional when discussing racism, ultimately resulting in nothing getting solved and the non-white person being angry. Thanks for taking my question.
You do it through the process of compensatory conversation control, which is what we've been talking about all day today. And it's the use of words and how best to go about solving problems. Keep concentrating on this. Problem solving, problem solving, problem solving. What's the best way to solve problems? In a scientific laboratory or when you're talking to someone on a bus, or talking to someone on the phone, and you're about what? Problem solving. What's the best procedure for doing that? Questions and answers.
Yes, sir.
Why? Because the logical procedure throughout the entire universe is all problems, without exception, are solved through what process? Questions and answers. So the way you control your emotions is that you immediately go into a question mode. Stay in the question lane. Don't stay away from making statements. Now, when you start talking to people about racism and all like that, they say the smartest white people, or the white supremacists rather, are the smartest people on the planet, and someone starts arguing, what you want is conversation control, compensatory conversation control. That's what it's called, so that you don't argue. When you have conversation control, you don't have an argument. What's the best way to avoid an argument? Ask questions.
Ask questions,
and
yes.
do not help the person with the answer. Just listen for the person's answer, so that the person works themselves through their own question. See what I mean? Or through the question that you are presenting to them.
Yes, sir.
Rather, correction. You are presenting the question. The person has to do what? Think. The first thing that happens, that's the mechanics of it. When I ask a person, how can I get to the nearest grocery store? I ask a person that, standing on a street corner. That causes that person to immediately do what? Think about a grocery store. Think about the question that I'm asking. I didn't make a statement. I ask a question. And be ready for whatever answer you get.
Yes.
The person sometimes might be belligerent when you ask a question. They say, why are you asking me a question? Why you ask me about the grocery store? Don't you know what a grocery store is? And so now the person made a statement and then asked you a question. Do you know where the grocery store is?
Yes, sir.
And so you answer, no, I don't, sir. And always concentrate on not how the person is saying what is being said, but what is being said.
Yes, sir.
Listen for the words. Don't pay attention to the emotion, except maybe if you think the person may be so belligerent that they may do you bodily harm. You may put distance between the person and you, but stay away from statements and just stay in the question lane, because you're causing that person to think, and you're also getting information that you probably need.
Okay.
It's compensatory compensation control. It's the best way to control any situation. Stay in the question lane.
Yes, sir. Okay, before we go to the this Gmail here, could you speak to your book, how we can get the book, and what's the book about?
The book is about trying to solve the problem of racism. That's what I started out to do once I put it in book form. I really started out, when I first started writing the first few pages, just trying to figure out how I was going to get through the day, dealing with race issues, either directly or indirectly, working on jobs and being in the military and et cetera, et cetera. And so I had to have some kind of code that I would go by where I don't have to do a lot of last-minute thinking. So the first 6 pages that I wrote was in 1957. And I just carried around those 6 pages. And when things would come up, I would resort to looking at my 6 pages of code. Code just meaning how best to go about saying something or doing something anytime something happened. And it was working for me. So little by little, those 6 pages, because things kept coming up, those 6 pages turned out to be about 13. I carried those 13 pages around for quite a while until they got tattered. And then I just copy them over again and whatnot. But little by little, other things kept coming up that I hadn't encountered. So I said, I got to codify this, because I don't like to do a whole lot of last-minute thinking. I'm not real good at fast thinking, which I'm still not. See, I like to do slow thinking. I mean, really, I don't like to do it. I like to be a fast thinker, but I'm not. So I like to have stuff already outlined for me where I don't have to do that last minute thinking because I make too many mistakes.
Yes, sir.
So that's what codification is about. So I was compensating for not being a fast thinker by writing down code. And over a period of time, it turned out to be the books that you now have now, the ones that I'm recommending that you get. And that's what it's about.
Okay.
Textbook workbook for victims of white supremacy. That's what it's about. And you can get it by going to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com.
And contained in that book is the action for thought, speech, and action for victims of white supremacy, correct?
That's one of the supplementary titles. The basic title is the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, words which are explained in the book.
Yes, sir.
It's a compensatory counter-racist code, and meaning a way of thinking, speaking, and acting against racism in order to replace it with justice as an individual person. I want to emphasize that. The book is designed to be used by an individual person. You don't have to consult anybody. And anything in the book that doesn't make sense to you, don't use it. Don't ever do anything or say anything that doesn't make sense to you. It's got to make sense to you.
Yes, sir.
That's why it's directed to the individual.
Yes, sir.
You don't have to check with anybody. You just say, well, this doesn't make sense to me. This doesn't work for me at all. One of the first people to read my book told me that he looked at my book and went through it thoroughly, and he said, Fuller, you know what you got there? You got nothing there. And I said, nothing? He said, yeah. He said, I didn't find nothing in your book I could use. And I said, well, that's the way it's supposed to work. It's the compensatory code, meaning it's the making up for what's missing. So if you don't have nothing missing, and you don't think it will help you do anything, then don't use it. It's for people who are trying to solve a problem. I'm not trying to give you a problem. I'm trying to help solve a problem.
Yes.
And I've used some of the stuff to solve problems.
Yes, sir.
So if it doesn't work, don't use it.
Okay, and quickly,
ProduceJustice.com.
Okay.
That's how you can get it.
And then there's a word guide there?
There's a word guide. Now, the word guide, sometimes people say, well, that's a different book. No, it isn't. It's just an extension of the book that I already have.
Okay.
And also, I'll say this, because I'm not just promoting the book. People who already have the older book, the 1984 version, don't throw it away. That book is still valid in 2017. You can still use it.
Okay.
This book is just a revised, updated, and expanded edition. There's just more material in it. That's all.
Okay. All righty. All right. Now let's see here. Dr. J wrote this. Greetings, Mr. Fuller. On page 177 of the revised expanded edition, the following question is written, and it says, how much so-called socializing should you do with people whom you, and then it has parentheses, or they, regard as neighbors? Then he says, the answer reads in part, observe what white people do for entertainment, but do not participate unless, and then it has parentheses, it is of maximum constructive value. My question, Mr. Fuller, could just attending the socialized event be considered to be constructive if you do lots of looking and listening?
Yes, that's what you're supposed to do. See, and when white people say a black person moves into what is called a white neighborhood, quote unquote, and a welcoming committee comes over because they say that's what they do. And they say, yes, I mean, we know you're black and all like that, and we welcome you. We want you to know that, hey, no problem here. We don't have any problem with that. You being in the neighborhood. Not going to be any signs out there on your yard, or we're not going to do any graffiti or anything, or look at you hostilely around here. We're very friendly people. We're very open. Okay, so you accept that because that's what they're saying. This is the kind of world that you want. Okay? But now when they say that, come over and we're going to have a whiskey party or something like that, Then you go into constructive mode. Is this going to produce a constructive result? Now, if you tend to believe that it's not, but you still feel a little nervous about whether you should or shouldn't go, you can still go, but when you get there, just limit what you're going to do to one basic thing: observing. And if somebody says, well, you're not drinking and you're not dancing, you're not telling jokes, and you just say, well, I didn't come here for that. I was invited here to have a, quote, you said have a good time, relax, make myself at home. So you say, well, this is what I'm doing. You know,
Okay.
I'm relaxing. I'm sitting here on the sofa, and I'm watching the other people. I mean, you know, dancing and getting drunk and doing whatever they're doing, and you know, I'm fulfilling my social obligation to the welcoming committee. I mean, you know, I thought, and if I'm not, then you go into the question mode. What is it that I'm supposed to be doing?
Mm-hmm.
And if they say, well, they might put it in for really polite. They'll ask you, well, why aren't you drinking? You'll say, I'm not drinking because I don't want to drink. They say, well, what do you want to do? I just want to sit here doing what I'm doing. I'm enjoying myself. They say, well, you're not doing nothing. So that's what I came here to do.
Okay. Okay. I got you. Let's see here. 1-877-932-9766 is the number you can call to get in contact with the show for the remaining moments, or you can Gmail me at the numeral 7 Mr. Bobby at gmail.com. And we are discussing politics, the sixth area of people activity in this system of racism, white supremacy, with the focus today being on thought, speech, and or action, and in that order. Savage Life wrote this, Mr. Fuller. He says, when you look at the rich and powerful people, billionaires and trillionaires, they come in diverse colors and sexes, but they have a big influence on how the world is run in all 9 areas of activity. They make money off of chaos in the world, which is why we constantly have wars over oil and resources. Racism was created based on the royalist system. We need to figure out how to dismantle a system where the rich have hypnotized people into believing skin color is most important. The rich come in all shades and all genders. Mr. Fuller, have you ever thought that we should focus on ways to end the reign of, quote, wealth supremacy, end of quote?
Well, it comes down to what you mean by wealth and what do you mean by supreme and who has it. I say white supremacy is the greatest, most powerful, motivating force among the people of this planet since it was established.
Mm-hmm.
And so that takes care of it right there. Those white people who have chosen to be white supremacists are the most powerful people, the most informed people on this planet over the people who are classified as non-white. Now, the non-white people who have what you call money has a source. And in the system of white supremacy, the source of all money that has any value at all is R/R, the white supremacists. They are the most powerful people, not because they have money. Money does not make the white supremacists. The white supremacists make money. They decide the value of money by deciding what? The value of people.
Mm-hmm.
And they dominated all of the people of color, and that means they automatically have domination over everything that the people of color have.
Okay. Let me get this last call in. Go ahead. What line, Ed? Line number 1? Okay, line number 1. You're on with Mr. Neely Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Sure. And I would like to ask Mr. Fuller, has he ever read any books on critical thinking? And if so, could he recommend any books? And is the compensatory code considered a critical thinking book itself?
Mr. Fuller?
Oh, yes. Thought, speech, and action. That's what we started this program with this evening. And that is in the title of the book, one of the supplementary titles. And it's a textbook, workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of white supremacy. And people ask me sometimes, what books do I recommend? Any book that gives you information that can be used to solve problems. That's all I can say. Or what is a book, really? A book is information. That's all. Some kinds of information. This is when you pick up a book, it's giving you some type of something to think about. You think about what you're reading. But you don't have time to read every book in the world. I don't know how many books are printed per week. How many newspapers, how many little of everything. I mean, tons and tons and tons and tons. So, any book that you hear about, written by anybody, that may have some information in that book that will help you do what? Solve a problem, you go straight to that book. And you might say, well, what about reading for entertainment? All of your entertainment. Because a lot of movies, are based on books and whatnot. A movie that I recommend sometimes, Casablanca, is based, I understand, on a script called Everyone Comes to Rick's. I've never seen the book. It's written by somebody, a script writer. They have that. People write scripts before they make movies. So you just say, well, is there any lesson that I can learn? Lessons for what? For solving a problem. So even the movies that I recommend are about problem solving, but you have to look for the problem that they're talking about in the movie. You have to look for that. You start off before you even look at the movie with that in mind. Am I going to learn anything that's going to help me to solve a problem? And that's in your field of entertainment even. So it's the same way with anything that you read. And there's no telling where you might read just in a whole book. It might be just one or two things that help you solve a problem. But those one or two things may change your entire existence. People have said that all down through the ages. That, that they read a book once, and it was just a couple of lines in the entire book. A book of maybe 1,000 pages. But just that one or two lines in that one book changed their whole perspective on everything that they were going to do after they read it.
Alrighty. Thank you, caller. And thank you, callers, and all the Gmails for that. You've made the show successful, and we will try to do better.